Some products are so successful that they become synonymous in their field. We clean our house with a Hoover, we do up our coats with Velcro, and when we want to jot down an idea, we use a biro. And over 60 years after it's introduced and over 20 years after the last one was made, there are still some people who will call a car shaped like this a Mini Cooper.
Our friends at Lancaster Insurance are running monthly giveaways. You can win all sorts, from experience days to tools, restaurant vouchers and tech. So check the video description for full details and to enter.
Of course, it's not wrong to call this particular Mini a Mini Cooper, because that's exactly what it is. In fact, it is a Mark II Mini Cooper from the late 1960s. More generally, why is the Mini Cooper name such an entity? Why is it one of the biggest names in motoring history? Why is it a name that is still valuable today? Why can you still buy in 2023 a Mini Cooper? It's the Mini Cooper that made the Mini what it is, made it not so much the commercial success, so that was part of it, but the cultural icon that it was in the 60s and 70s. It's still with us today. People born after the Mini ended production still like Minis. And really it's because the Mini Cooper is one of the most successful sporting cars of all time. It has a motorsports record that any other car would give its right wheel nuts for. It dominated British Touring Car Championship. I think it had 32 international rally victories of various sorts, including things like the Thousand Lakes Rally, the Finland Rally, the Acropolis Rally. Utterly dominated Australian saloon car race. Minis regularly won all the top 10 places at Bathurst. It even carved out a niche for itself in American saloon car racing. So those are the facts, that's what the Mini Cooper did. But there are lots of successful cars out there. And it doesn't quite get to why the Cooper has this allure about it. And I think a big part of that is that it was never meant to be a sports car. And the British, we typically love an underdog, but we also love the unlikely hero. And anyone who looked at the Mini on the drawing board in the late 50s at Longbridge would not have had any inkling that this was shaping up to be one of the great sporting cars of all time. So almost by chance, it happened to have the perfect blueprint to be the ideal small sports saloon. Even before the Mini entered production, people were sizing it up for its sporting potential. One of those was John Cooper. John Cooper had revolutionised motorsport by the idea of putting the mid-rear engine. He put the engine behind the driver, driving the rear wheels, and so for all the same reasons that the Mini was very good saloon car, it transformed the handling and performance of small, lightweight racers. The original Mini, as in the Austin 7 or the Morris Mini Minor as it was at the time, was not a fast car. They had 848cc engines making about 30 horsepower and a top speed of about 70 miles an hour. And that was very good performance for a small car in the late 50s. But they weren't sporty, so basically all John Cooper did to turn the ordinary Mini into the Mini Cooper was make it a bit more powerful with a twin carb engine of a slightly bigger capacity, a 970cc. He put some front disc brakes on it and he gave it a remote gear change, and really that's all it needed. It just shows how, intentionally or not, how well suited the Mini inherently was to motorsport. And because the Mini needed so few fundamental changes in its transition from economy-minded city car to rally dominating sports car, this Mini is actually remarkably like any other Mini to drive. It just goes faster. It's got the same steering responses, it's got the same ride, that sort of very short coupled but surprisingly compliant ride, particularly on relatively good roads like this. It's got the same road holding. Here we go, we're coming up to a corner, just tip it in. If you were to come up with a car to go down British roads really quickly and easily, it would be something like a Mini. It just needs the power and the brakes, and that's what John Cooper gave it, and that's all it needed to turn it into a champion. And of course that also speaks to another reason why the Mini Cooper was such a cultural phenomenon, is that even if you couldn't afford a Cooper, and they were relatively expensive and they didn't make very many of them in comparison to the ordinary versions, you could go out and you could turn an ordinary Mini into a Cooper. And in the early 60s, when Mini Coopers started going out onto the tracks and the rally stages, they seriously embarrassed a lot of sort of automotive aristocracy. And obviously, famously, Enzo Ferrari, he thought the Mini Cooper was just fantastic. He thought it was one of the best cars in the world. He thought that all his racing drivers should at least drive one, if not own one. And acclaim doesn't come much higher than that in the world of motoring exotica. It wasn't just a case of beating stuff like MGBs and Triumph TRs. Mini Coopers trounced Mark II Jags and Lotus Cortinas on racetracks, and just on the average road, if you were in your Mini Cooper and you came across an Austin Healey 3000, on your average British road that was more corners than straights, provided you were a vaguely competent driver, a Mini Cooper would easily keep up with, if not be able to get past, a big Healey. And this was serious stuff. And there's not really anything like that on the roads today that is so affordable, so attainable, and yet so good in terms of performance and its capabilities. And as I said earlier, this is a Morris Cooper, which is the standard one. Obviously there was the Cooper and the Cooper S. The Cooper S was the high performance version with the 1275cc engine. This has got the normal 998cc engine. And pretty much apart from that, that was the only difference. And of course the Cooper S was the one that formed the basis for the homologated rally specials that really hit all the headlines, particularly that triple win at the Monte Carlo, 64, 65 and 67. And that's really what sealed the deal on the Mini Cooper's stardom. That's what earned it its place in motoring history. And of course you'll notice the gap there, 64, 65, 67. What happened in 66? Well, there were 3 Mini Coopers from the BMC Works department. They finished first, second and third, and then they were disqualified by the scrutineers because they had non-standard light bulbs. But it meant that a Citroen DS won the rally overall. That publicity for not winning the rally actually almost did more for the Mini Cooper's reputation, particularly at home, than the 3 undisputed wins did. Like, that really sealed the deal. Of course, the irony is that immediately after that, from 1968 onwards, the Mini Cooper wasn't competitive on international rallying. The Ford Escort, which was larger, similarly light, simpler, had much more tuning potential, could take much more powerful engines, began to dominate. BMC was hitting the financial skids. They didn't have any new products in the line that could match the Escort. The Mini was 10 years old with no replacement on the horizon. And so as soon as that Triple Crown had been won, the Mini vanished from international rallying. And rather ironically, by the time this one was made, the Mark II, which came out in '68, the Mini Cooper was kind of a glass cannon. It was a famous name that, as far as professional, international, top-rank rallying and motorsport's gone, had kind of had its day. You started seeing, for the '70s, the RS version of the Ford Escort began taking that position as the motorsport enthusiast's dream car. And without the Mini Cooper going out there and winning rallies and races to prop up the commercial value of the model, BMC saw no reason to keep building it. And so they canned it after the Mark II. There was originally no Mark III Mini Cooper. They then made about 1,500 Mark III Cooper S's, very begrudgingly, supposedly, to satisfy a legal contract with John Cooper. But the fact it came back after a 20-year gap shows how durable that name was. And when the Cooper came back as a limited edition in the end of the 80s, it sold out instantly. They could sell as many as they could make many times over. And as we know, by the 90s, basically you could only buy a Mini Cooper, and it was the Mini Cooper that saw the model out in its last decades. And you can still buy a Mini Cooper today with the modern BMW made version of the Mini. It's the name that underpins the brand, and you still get people who call any Mini a Mini Cooper. And that really speaks for itself as to why the Mini Cooper is such a great car, possibly the greatest car of all time.
This video is proudly sponsored by Lancaster Insurance. Give them a call on 01480 400 889 for an insurance quote on your classic car. And don't forget to click the link below to enter their latest competition.